This shyness followed me to my first year of college. I ended up at Radford University, which is a tiny liberal arts school nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, about 8,000 students of Virginia. And I ended up here quite by accident. I found a Playboy magazine underneath my uncle's bed, and it had an article in it that described the top 10 party schools in the United States. And Radford was listed as number 8. But as an introvert, the partying didn't interest me that much. Back then I was afraid of my shadow. But what did interest me was beside Radford, it listed the former all-female teachers college as having an 8-to-1 female-to-male ratio. So as a virgin who had enough testosterone inside of him to kill a male rhinoceros, that appealed to me. And so I have to tell you that going to a college with so many women around, or girls, was pretty fantastic. But it came with it's a blessing and a curse. It was a blessing because aesthetically it was nice to walk across campus and see all these girls. It was a curse because on the day that I arrived, actually until the day that I left 4 years later, I arrived on that first day with a self-activating, randomly firing, very embarrassing problem that lasted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It was an embarrassing hard-on cycle. And, I felt like for those 4 years I was in a Viagra commercial. But instead of being an older, confident man driving through campus on my sailboat, I was a very shy teenager, like I said, afraid of his own shadow. I had a mullet, and I was about 98 pounds, and I had back knee, and I was afraid to even talk to these girls, and so it was a problem. At night, the problem only increased because that's when I would begin my dreams about humping. Finding the perfect hump and eventually getting dumped by someone that I might eventually hump. And so for this problem, which I had a boner from the time I woke up in the morning till I went down to the cafeteria, I sat down in the cafeteria, got up from the cafeteria, went to class, sat down in class, got up from class, and went back to my dorm rooms at the end of the night. And I tried a lot of do-it-yourself remedies. I tried putting duct tape down there. But like the Silence of the Lambs guy, that caused a rash. And for a week, I borrowed my roommate's athletic cup, but that made the problem more pronounced. And so the only solace that I found was locking myself away in Powell Hall, which was the music building. Locked away in the piano rooms, I would sit down at the piano and write songs about my problem. I realized at that point that I was a guy that might never find someone to ever hump. And since I was old enough to now realize that, it weighed on me like this incredible burden. And so eventually I had written enough songs about this problem that I found a little dive bar at the edge of campus where I would bring my songs in and play them. They were all songs that had way too much rhyme in them for their own good. P.S. I'm sorry, and I wish you were here. P.S. I'm sorry, and I wish you were near. I'll send it on the next express. It'll get to your address before tomorrow. Very fancy music writing skills there. Thank you. Actually, when I wanted to play all my songs on guitar because I'm more confident on guitar, but I didn't want this process of being in the show. I had to go back to the piano, and all my insecurities came back when I started playing these songs I wrote back then. None of the students on campus could see me play there because they couldn't get in with a fake ID, and so I played mostly to a Metamucil and Poly grip denture crowd, and they didn't mind the rhyme because they felt it was classy as they drank their beer. And so I soon began to develop a reputation on campus and then beyond campus for this huge talent that I had, not my piano talent, not the other talent. And word soon began to spread off campus back to my hometown, and right before Christmas break, I got a letter in my campus mailbox, a P.O. box. That's the little Lady Elaine from Mr. Rogers. The mail's here, the mail's here. And it was a letter from Remington Chapman. Remington Chapman was this huge planet of a man that lived in my hometown. He owned half the land in our county of Chesterfield, and he was also a judge. He was the first circuit court judge. He had a daughter named Sylvia, and Sylvia was perfect and petite, and I shared a relationship with her in high school that was merely real estate related. We shared a desk beside each other in homeroom. Well, the letter that Judge Chapman sent me was more of a request. He was requesting me to write a song for his daughter's first annual holiday reunion and soiree. And in exchange for this one song that I would write, I would get $100 cash, I would get a willing and able audience to listen to my song, and I would get to attend the exclusive holiday event with a date. And I was ecstatic. I mean, what wasn't there to like about that? My first commission piece. And so I knew exactly who I was going to bring, Leanne Darling. This was a girl I'd been going with on and off since middle school. She was a flute player in the band class that I took, and I was an alto saxophone player. And she was petite and perfect, just as Sylvia had been, but she was also shy. Her parents had divorced very early on, and we sort of bonded over this shyness. We kind of shut the world out and built this firewall around ourselves, and we kind of just excluded the world and kind of fell into each other all those years. Leanne was famous for two things. One, she had hair so big that it came with its own fire escape. And two, she wore shoulder pads in all her clothing long after they had been banned from fashion, which I liked because I had sort of a football fetish for most of my life. Let me talk about this football fetish. It was more of a football obsession. My mom was convinced that if I ever played football, I would get paralyzed. And so I wasn't allowed to play football. And so I would, starting at a very young age, I would have art sleepovers with my guy friends. What? We'd check out a huge stack of books from the library and trace the football pictures in the books, staying up all night Friday and Saturday. And then when I got to high school, I took that obsession with football and took it to a totally new level. And that's when I joined the high school marching band, because I figured every Friday night the high school marching band would be down on that field and I could be close to the game that I loved more than anything. And so I had nicknamed her Pop-Tart, although I had never given her that. I had never actually spoken that name to her in public. I just referred to her as Pop-Tart to my friends. The holiday reunion. I picked Pop-Tart up in my mom's GMC Pacer, and we headed off to the Chapman's mansion. I remember as we pulled along the Chestnut Line Drive leading up to the mansion, man, we were a sight to behold. She had borrowed her sister's long black dress with shoulder pads and a long black coat that went with it, and she had a black hat that went with it as well, which sort of looked like it had shoulder pads in it as well, because I told you she was kind of obsessed with shoulder pads. I had borrowed one of those yellow suits from the 70s. My dad had given it to me. One of those, I didn't think they made those anymore, suits. But we felt strong and confident and less shy as we were pulling up to the mansion. And I actually felt, I felt like $1,000,000. In reality, I looked like a wax bean and she looked like she was going to a funeral. But that didn't deter us of developing this feeling even more as we walked up to the valet and gave him our car. Then we walked up to the big oak doors, and I handed my invitation to the hired help. And I guess words can't describe the way that expectation of feeling like I was finally part of this environment that I'd kind of felt excluded from my whole life. But when we walked in through those doors, it totally changed. We were hit what could only be described as a superlative situation. Over here was the best looking, over here the best dressed from the year before, over here the entire cheerleading squad, and scattered throughout the house was the entire football team from the year before. And in a room of birds that soared, I suddenly felt like a strange bird that never learned how to fly.